Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name's Greg Chin, and welcome to our Avid audio community plugin. We've been doing these now for the last couple of months, and they've been going really well. We're really glad to have this time with you guys. I see some familiar names coming up here in the Zoom. So wherever you are in the world, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. We've got a really great session planned today. We've got two amazing speakers that are going to be sharing some their depth of knowledge. So we've got Mr. Gil Gowing, based here in the United States, actually in Central Florida, who's going to be doing a folder tracks deep dive. And then we've got Mr. Dave Tyler in the UK, who's going to be sharing a little bit of knowledge about how, if you need some support help for Pro Tools and your Avid audio stuff, where you can find that information. So we're going to jump right into it. But before we do, just a couple of quick little housekeeping things we wanted to get into. We're here on Zoom, and we're also broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and a few other live streaming applications and platforms. So, again, welcome to everyone. For those of you here on the Zoom, we're going to be taking questions from the audience. So to be able to do that, we ask that you do a couple of things just to kind of keep things kind of in line and moving smoothly, so that we can get to as many questions as we possibly can. So here on Zoom, on the top right-hand corner, make sure that the gallery view is selected rather than the speaker view. That way you can kind of see what's, everyone who's speaking. In this case, it's just going to be Gil and then Dave. So that's not that big of a deal, but also when we have larger panels, then we'll do that. You can also hide any non-video participants. That will kind of clear out some of the clutter that you might have on your screen in your Zoom settings. So you can actually just click the three little dots by the mute, and you can actually then select hide non-video participants. If you want to ask a question, both Gil and Dave will kind of, we're going to go into some Q&A towards the end. And safe space, please keep everything respectful and try and keep everything, really to the subject matter. So in Gil's case, it'll be really centered around folder tracks. And then, like I said, Dave will be talking about Pro Tools support, where you can find help. To be able to submit your questions, very simple. In your menu bar, there's a Q&A icon. You can click that and then type your question and then send it in. We're going to be answering some of those questions as moderators within the chat. So there are a couple of us there. Myself, Jack Komar will be there. For those of you who are not on the Zoom, we've got some moderators on those platforms as well. We're going to try and answer as many questions as possible. But again, here in Zoom, you can actually just submit your questions here. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. And some of those will be answered live in the session, and some of them will be answered directly in the chat in the Q&A section. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Gil Gowing. Just really quickly, Gil is a legend. He's a veteran here at Avid, been here over 20 years, an audio expert through and through. Many of you know him. You've seen him at trade shows. You've seen him on many of our videos, and we're really happy to have him here. He's going to be deep diving into Pro Tools folder tracks. I cannot wait for this. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share. And Gil, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen here. Sorry, I don't have a webcam view today. Having some technical difficulties with my camera, but hopefully everybody can see my Pro Tools screen now. And as Greg said, kind of what we want to do today is just kind of take you through just maybe some ways to use the new folder tracks feature that was introduced in Pro Tools 2020.3 that you might not have thought about before. Maybe solving some little problems here and there, and just some, for what I found, some really cool ways to utilize it, not in the standard way of working. But before we get into some of those things, I did want to just talk a little bit about kind of some folder track basics. So if we're looking at my Pro Tools screen here, you can see that I have some folders already kind of created for this is a music session. I've got all my food groups, drums, percussion, bass, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, keys, lead vocals, background vocals, and whatnot. And these are all routing folders. So we do have two different types of folders. There's a routing folder and a basic folder. Work a little bit backwards here. The routing folder is essentially a folder container of tracks that also includes an aux part of the equation. So basically, you can put a bunch of tracks inside a folder. So I'll go ahead and open up this drums folder, for instance. And let me pop over to my mixer page so we can kind of see this a little bit better. In my drums, I have all of my individual drum elements. And then down here at the end, I have some subgroup routing for some clean and a crush bus and a kick snare bass bus as well. And if you look at the outputs of the tracks here in the folder, most of those tracks are actually feeding a drum bus aux that is then being coming into these last two aux channels down here. And then basically the three auxes that are kind of gathering all those sounds up together and being able to blend those are actually being sent to a bus that's assigned to the folder output. So this is something that just a quick little tip that might not be quite clear right out of the gate, is that you can put whatever tracks you want to into a routing folder, but they don't actually have to be routed to that routing folder's input. So for instance, I've got all these drum tracks. They're basically going into bust into these, and then these two auxes, and these are what's being then routed out that drum folder, the routing folder output or input. Another thing here, I've got the electric guitar folder that I actually have multiple folders inside. So this is another thing real quick. Folders in Pro Tools can basically be layered up to 9 layers deep and really create some nice complex kind of views, so you can keep everything nice and tidy. So I've got this H guitar set of tracks, I've got this J guitar set of tracks, and these are both routing folders as well. So if I wanted to like take the individual guitars from each one of these players through the routing folder, I can then put processing on that and blend those as a separate group altogether. Now I do have all of these individual guitars feeding through sends guitar effects, and because I didn't need to do any kind of balancing or actual manipulation of being able to put, say, a plugin across all those outputs of those, this is a basic folder. So you can see that it differs quite a bit in view. All you really have is a group assignment if you wanted to assign it to a group, solo mute, and then some signal indicators for both audio and MIDI there. So basic folder really is all about organization and being able to keep everything organized. And that's kind of the big overall message with these folders is just being able to really see a nice big overview of your session, and then being able to go in and dive down into whatever parts you want to really quickly. Another really cool thing that we actually went over on our last webinar was we now have control over both the routing and basic folders from any of our Yukon-based control surfaces. So from S1 Avid control all the way up to the S4 and the S6, you have the ability to manipulate, open and close all those folders right there from the surfaces. So a lot of really great things. So that just a quick overview. So now what I want to do is let's switch to another session here. And what I want to show now is maybe some uses of using folders that you might not have thought of, or just some creative ways to do it. Now, some of these things I'm going to show you, we actually have some videos already from our Pro Tools quick tips that are over on YouTube. If you haven't checked those out, make sure you get over there. We have a huge list of great, really short but very specific to the point videos over there that you can really get a lot of great information from basics all the way to the advanced about how Pro Tools and some of our hardware works. So definitely go and check out the Pro Tools Tech Tips over on YouTube. But so, like I said, some of these things already have videos, some of them don't, and I wanted to definitely give a shout out to our worldwide solution specialist audio team. A lot of these things came from them, and I've just kind of accumulated them, and we'll be showing them today. So the first one I want to get into is very specific for music production. So Pro Tools does not actually have a drum editor built into its MIDI editor. We have a piano roll editor, we have a score editor, and we have an events view, but we don't actually have kind of a typical drum editor like you'd see in other MIDI programs. So what I want to do here is I'm going to create kind of a pseudo drum editor here using a routing folder and using some MIDI tracks in that routing folder. So I'm going to create this real quick, and we're going to call it drums. And let's see, want to go ahead and put a Falcon on here. This is a really, really great plug-in VI that comes with every version of Pro Tools right now. And a lot of really great things you can do with it. A lot of great third-party sound sets you can get for it, but I'm actually going to use the Plug Sound Avid edition, and we're going to come over here to drums and percussion under electronic and machines, and then go to old school machines, and we're going to call up our Carolyn kit, which is a Linn drum, which is very cool. The next thing I want to do is with this routing folder highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and create, just as an example, we're going to create 4 MIDI tracks, and they will be with the routing folder highlighted. They go ahead and we'll create those tracks inside that folder for you. I'm going to quickly label these kick, snare, hat, and cowbell. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize with Pro Tools and the MIDI tracks, and instrument tracks as well, is that if you come over here to where you see this little sideways keyboard over here, right here to the left, the edit page on a track, if you right click on that, this is where you would normally change the size of a track if you wanted to, but there's also a way that you can assign a single note view for each one of these tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign, which I know that C1 with this instrument is kick drum, and then for snare is D1. The hi-hat is F#1. And the cowbell is C#3. So now I have these individual note edits views just for single notes. The other next thing I need to do really quick is by holding Shift and Option for Do to Selected, I want to make sure that all of those MIDI tracks are assigned to the first channel of that Falcon. Now what I can do is I'm going to record enable one of the tracks, and you can hopefully hear those drums being there that I played from a MIDI keyboard. But what you can do is, if you see with the, if I basically select the Smart tool up here and hover over say the kick drum track and hold my control key down on Mac, or it would be the start key on Windows, you'll see that it turns into a pencil tool. And with that, I can actually now go in, once I have a note on that track, you can see that it turns into a MIDI editor. And if I want to, I can basically just double click now in those gridded areas. So I'm basically placing a kick drum on all 4s, and let me go ahead and make a quick selection here for 2 bars, and I can play that. Then I can go ahead and start doing the same thing with the snare. So like on the 2 and the 4, hold down the control key double click, add that note, go through and start double clicking, adding those notes. And then down here at the end, I want to do a quick roll. So I have my grid set at 16th notes, hold down the control key again, and I can then add in a quick, just by dragging across with that grid, 4 snares. And then the same thing here, I can just click on this hi-hat, add a note. We can add in a bunch of hi-hats and, you know, basically create a nice little drum pattern. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and do some editing of the velocity. If I hold down the Option key for Do to All and click over here, I can show automation lanes, and it's going to show me the velocity of everything. Now, all these hi-hats are highlighted. I can then come over here, hold down the Command key, and I can lower those. And I can come over here and we can change the actual velocity of this fill. All right, so you can see, real easy to go in here and kind of have Pro Tools as the step editor now, and don't need to see that anymore with the actual notes. We can just close that, and we can now select this, and we can go ahead and copy and paste, do whatever we wanted to with it. Now, once you do set this up, we can color code these tracks as we want to, and all of that. So what I'm going to do here real quick is, if you want, select all the tracks, and then come up here, right click, and we can save this now as a track preset. So basically you can build as many drum editors tied to whatever VIs that you want, and actually, instead of having to rebuild this every single time, you can now save this as a track preset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this real quick and just show you that I've already done that, and it's a lot more complex. So let's delete that with all of the tracks in there. Now I could basically either now go to new track, come down here under track presets, under my presets, under drums, and do it. But here's another slick way you can bring in track presets is under Window, we're going to go and open up our default workspace. And over here under track presets, I can go ahead and type in, for my search, drum grid. Let's see. We're going to actually just go here real quick and grab this. And now I can just drag this out onto the edit page, and boom. There is my drums folder with color-coded tracks, all in notes view, all showing the velocity lanes. Now I can go in here and just start going back in and adding in notes just like I would on anybody else's drum editor. So a really quick, easy way to use Pro Tools as a drum editor. All right, so let's go ahead and change gears here real quick and open up another session. And this time what I want to do is I want to show how you can use folders to really kind of compartmentalize different types of sections when you're working on something. For instance, here's a sound design session for some posts. So got a number of different folders basically kind of blocked off for different types of things that you might need at different times of the session. So we have a folder that we have any kind of video tracks in that we might have different versions. For Pro Tools Ultimate users have multiple video tracks. You can kind of keep all those things in there and be able to switch back and forth and know what pictures you're working to. Second folder we have here is an assets folder. And in that we have a folder called sources, and we have a folder called samples. Now in the sources folder, we have basically several different tracks that we had. We could basically have microphones hooked up to record different types of audio into. In this one, Jeff Komar is the one that built this session. He had a Sennheiser Ambio mic that he has coming in 4 channels that you're able to record 4 channels in, and then we have it kind of spanned out for 712 Atmos with some different plugins on there. an MS mic coming in on a stereo track, and then a mono mic coming in to grab, basically sections of different audio and mono. From here, you can easily come over, audition anything, grab pieces, and then that would actually then be put down here into kind of putting into different sample tracks and how you're going to want to use these later on that could then be basically exported out as files that will go into our next folder, which is for our sound design. Now, so these are our routing folders that have falcons on them, like we did previously with that drum example. But basically, we have different types of sound design for each one of these. And in each folder, we have MIDI tracks that are basically playing back sounds for different things. So here's a track of different resins that can be triggered via MIDI. That you just come in here, drop MIDI notes onto. Same thing with the whooshes, the catches, the joins, and the whips. So basically, once you have everything in place, you can easily now just come over here and select these tracks and right-click, and we can commit these down to audio. Now, what's really cool about this is it basically is going to allow me to gather up all those MIDI sounds and convert them into stereo audio tracks. And you can see those basically putting them right after their MIDI folder as now a condensed audio track. From here, what we want to do is we want to basically be able to grab just all of those actual committed tracks, and we're going to drag these down into the stems folder below. So let's close up our design. And now we have a folder that basically is for our stems that we can route to that stem output. And then along with the backgrounds and the effects returns for everything, we can now export this out basically to a mixer. So instead of the mixer having to deal with any MIDI tracks or does he have this virtual instrument or whatever, we now have all the flattened audio in the stems all set in a folder, so we know exactly what those things are, along with some background tracks for this and the effects returns that they can then, the mixer can then go back and do whatever they need to with them. So you can see that it, within one single session, you have all these different sections that you can easily kind of go back and forth between when you're working on different parts of the project. And so instead of having to save a bunch of different sessions and go in and out, everything now resides in one section, color-coded and very easily to be able to get back and forth in between. I'm sure there's probably some questions coming in. I can't see them right now, and we'll answer those at the end. I just kind of want to keep going through these different types of uses for folders. So we're going to close this one down. And let's go back and talk about maybe something that all users can deal with, and that's basically wanting to do maybe a couple of different mixes. So within the session that we're looking at now, we have basically a basic folder with a bunch of routing folders inside of it that has all the tracks of a song that you're mixing. So you can see here, I just held the option key down and basically exploded out all of those folders. Oops, let's close that. And you can see that got all those tracks there. I'm going to close that back down real quick. And so let's say we want to basically have the ability to hear maybe some mix changes, but we want to be able to go back and forth, and we want to maybe make changes to either side. We don't want to print it right now. So what we can do here is just with this one single mix folder with all the tracks in it, right click, and we're going to come down here and we're going to say duplicate this. And we're going to duplicate everything about that folder. And we hit OK. It basically is thinking, and now it's made a duplicate of that. I'm going to go ahead and come over here and change the color of that so we know it's a different mix. And then if we open that up, you can see that there's all the tracks that we had inside of it. Now, one thing you'll notice is that they all have the name .dupe1 after it. So what I want to do is I want to change the name of this folder to mix2. There we go. And then I'm going to select all the tracks inside this folder that have the name .dupe1 on them. And this might be something that not everybody is familiar with. This is a feature that came out a couple of years ago with Pro Tools, and this is called batch rename. So what this is going to allow me to do is come up here to this top, and I'm going to replace everything that has DUP1 or dupe1 now with the suffix of mix2. So basically, every one of those tracks that we just created and duplicated have that suffix after it. And then in one button push, basically now everything now has mix2 after it. Now, mix1 tracks don't have all that, so we can do kind of the same thing with it. Let me come down here and select all of these tracks. And now we're going to come back down to batch rename. And instead of replacing this time we're just going to add the suffix .mix1 to the end. So now we know what tracks belong to what mix. Now we can easily either mute one of these and go back and forth and make changes, or we can even use the, under options, we can change our solo mode to XOR, cancels previous solos. So this would allow you to, it's only going to solo one track at a time. Now, one thing I will caution everybody is if they use this mode, when you come out of a solo, or if you solo something in that folder and you unsolo it, it will be playing both mixes at one time. So it's probably best to use the mute functionality, go in, make some changes, come back out, mute the other side, then hit play, and go in and make changes on the other side. So real easy way within one session, once again, to do some mix comparisons. And it doesn't even have to be the same session. You could actually then import a whole other session in here and use it kind of and be able to pull elements from it. So a lot of great ways to be able to use folders kind of in a very creative way for mixing. Being able to kind of go back and forth and do some different comparisons this way. Now, the next thing we want to talk about, and I'm going to open up a session, is something that a lot of people have requested for many, many years and still hopefully someday working towards doing this. And that's basically having the ability to have multiple sessions open at the same time. Definitely a great feature request and something we definitely want to get to at some point. But we can kind of simulate that today with folders. So what I have here is a session that has a bunch of dialogue tracks in it. And what I'm going to do here real quick is we're going to select all those tracks, including the video track. And if we right click, there's a new move to command here that allows me to move all selected tracks to either an existing folder or a new folder. In this case, we're going to basically create a new folder for this. Basic folder is fine. And we're going to call this main session. All right. Now, basically now has gone through, put all those tracks in there, something I can easily kind of put up, close away, and we can hit play. You can hear some dialogue going on there. Now, one thing I want to do is maybe bring another session to be able to either compare some things with, or maybe I want to add some things, I want to drag some things over from another session. So what we're going to do here is let's create a new basic folder, and we're going to call this secondary session and bring that in. Now, with that folder selected, I'm going to go in now and import session data from another session. And we're going to go over here and grab this secondary session. And I can either just drag down this list or hold Option and select to bring these in as a new track. And that'll basically bring all the tracks in the secondary session. And because I have the folder highlighted when I do this, it's going to basically automatically put all those tracks in that folder for us. Now, I've got a bunch of routing and effects returns that came over with this. And but then I have all these different music tracks. Now for this example, really all I wanted to do was to listen to these strings. So I'm going to select them and we're going to make them active real quick. And now I can basically, once those get activated, now I can hear the strings against this little dialogue section. And got to make my input active. There we go. Now the cool thing about this is now I can go through and select all of these tracks that I want to say bring over into my main session. And we'll just grab those and drag them into the main session. I could have made duplicates, but because this is an import, very easy to just grab them and drag them in. We can now put that away, and now we have all of those string pieces in this particular main session now. Now I'm going to basically go down the timeline here real quick, and there's a section of dialogue that something happened and we lost one of the dialogue pieces from this little scene here.
Shall we drop the pleasantries?
But of course.
And there's supposed to be a line here, is all this violence really necessary? So I know that that is in the production dialogue section. So we're just going to create a new basic folder again, going to call this PDX. And then with that highlighted, we're going to go in and back into the import session data. And then we're going to go to our production dialogue session and import it in. All tracks. And there it is. And we can see that there's the three lines that we were talking about before. These are all inactive right now, so we're not hearing them.
Of course.
So let's actually make this dialogue 4-track active. Make sure that's what we want.
Shall we drop the pleasantries?
But of course. Is all this violence really necessary?
All right, it's just raw going right out, no effects or anything added to it right now. But very easily now I can just select that, copy that clip to the clipboard. Let's go ahead and make that inactive again. Close that down, come up here to our main session, select our dialogue track. Oh, let me come back down here and make sure that that is selected correctly. There we go. And come up here to our dialogue track. And there's our selection. We're going to paste that in, and now we have all of our dialogue back in place.
Shall we drop the pleasantries?
But of course. Is all this violence really necessary?
So real simple, and you can see that once you close everything down, it keeps everything nice and tightly organized. If you decide that you don't need to see these things, you can either delete them or you can just hide them and make them inactive so they can be put away, make sure that they don't play back, but they all exist here, can easily bring them back in to grab other elements as you need to, or you can just completely delete them out of the session and go re-import them as needed. So just a real quick way to kind of get around some problems when you're dealing with not being able to have multiple sessions open. And this is going to work for anything. You might open up 2 sessions side by side and have some different plugin chains that you want to drag over, or like I said, like we just did in that last example, you might have a clip or some different audio that you might need to bring up to your main tracks. A lot of great ways to be able to utilize this way of using folder tracks. And then one last way to use folder tracks is if you work a lot with AAFs. And similar to what we're doing here with this multiple sessions open, we can basically have, and kind of how we were working before with our sound design session. So you can have a bunch of different elements that are all compartmentalized away in different tracks or in different folders that allow us to real easily kind of jump back and forth between maybe the main part of things that we're working on, like this mix print folder. We go in here, we've got all of our different groups. There's our VOs, that we can go in and look at. We've got any of our sync sound, our whooshes, all the different sound effects are all nice and categorized away. But then we also have a QuickTime ref folder up here that we basically have a number of different videos. And what we've done with this is we basically have got the main working video out on the top level of this QuickTime ref folder. And then in another folder, we basically have all of the other versions kind of stored away if we ever need to go back and kind of look at that. Also in this QuickTime ref folder is the video tracks rough mix that the editor did that we brought in, that we have synced up with that, and we can keep it muted and not have to worry about listening to that. And then down here we have our AAFs that basically, as we have imported in an AAF, we can we've got actually two different versions that we have folderized that you can go in, and at any time you can open these up, go and grab elements from them, listen to, you know, what the original cut was against what you're doing the mix with. So once again, using folders not just as a quick organizational tool, but to organize and be able to compartmentalize a lot of different things when you're working with very complex sessions and deadlines, being able to kind of keep everything all in one place and have the ability to easily go back and forth without having to close sessions, reopen sessions, go and try to find things. Everything can be kept in this one session and compartmentalized to be able to be accessed as you see fit. All right, so that's just some, you know, probably the tip of the iceberg of some different things that you can do with folder tracks in Pro Tools. Definitely anybody that has some other great ideas and some things that they've done with folder tracks, would love to see you guys post that on some of the different social media channels on Facebook, the Avid Pro Tools channel, the Avid channel, over on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, just, I mean, anything you can get up there and share, that would be awesome. So now we've got our second part of this webinar is going to be talking a little bit more about how to kind of interact with Avid and get to support. And so for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Dave Tyler and let him take it from here.
Great, thanks, Gil. So I'm just going to share my screen. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this because we all know that Pro Tools never breaks, but we'll try it anyway. So basically, what I want to do is just spend a few minutes looking at how, if you have a problem with Pro Tools, how you might go about getting help. Now, there are a number of different scenarios here. So really what I'm going to do is just concentrate on somebody who might be just a regular Pro Tools user, subscriber, or they have an upgrade and support plan. Just look at it from that point of view. We're not going to get into supporting hardware, or if you're maybe kind of a pro customer, you might go through a reseller and so on. So there are a number of different scenarios there. But as I say, we're going to concentrate on you know, just kind of basic support and some basic sort of troubleshooting. So let's have a look. So here's just a few tips, things that you can have a look at if something does go wrong. So what you can do is start out by looking in the Avid knowledge base. So my first tip actually is, don't go to the Avid knowledge base and type in your search there. If you actually do it from Google, so type in Avid knowledge base and then whatever you're searching for, then you're actually more likely to get straight to where you need to be. There's so many articles in what we call the K-base. You know, every support issue that we fix and so on, we try and sort of put that information out to end users. So if you're looking for maybe it's an error message or something like that, that's a really good place to go and look. If you want a little bit more sort of interactive help, definitely worth checking out is what we call the DUC, or the Avid Pro Audio community. So on there, it's a very active group of people who are happy to sort of discuss various issues, all Pro Tools related, which includes maybe sort of helping out with something which is broken. Again, you'll find that over the years, people have posted, all sorts of things in there. So it's a really good place to go and just kind of, search for information and see what's being posted and maybe ask some people. Good to know that the Duck is actually moderated by both members of our own Avid customer success team. So we do have people who are working for us who check it out, including sometimes product managers and so on. But we also have a bunch of moderators who don't work for Avid, but are our advocates. And again, they will sort of try and help you get to where you need to be. We have active Facebook page. So there's an Avid Facebook page, but an Avid Pro Tools Facebook page. And I know there's a whole bunch of people who are watching this webinar on that page. So hi to you. Again, this is monitored by people from our customer success team. So if you do go on there, then somebody from Avid may well be able to answer your question. Obviously, there's going to be a whole community of users, again, who will try and help you out. So just be aware that, someone with the best will in the world may try and help you out, but they may just be sort of have some ideas, but not that in-depth technical knowledge. So, it can be a team effort to help you, but obviously with something like the Facebook page, could be a bit more of a free for all. The classic support method to try is what we call trashing your preferences. So deleting the Pro Tools preference file. And if you're getting any kind of funky behavior with Pro Tools, then it's always a really good place to start. Just one thing to try before you do anything else. So definitely know how to do that. On a Mac, involves accessing your user library. So it's holding down the Option key, going to the Go menu in your Finder. You'll see the user library will appear. Navigate to there, to Preferences, Avid, Pro Tools, and there's your Pro Tools prefs. And on Windows, again, in order to access this, you do need to make sure that you're showing hidden folders. Go to Usernames, Users, then your username, App Data, Roaming, Avid, Pro Tools. What I would always recommend as well is if you're going to do that, then take a copy of your preference file, stick it on the desktop or somewhere, because if that doesn't fix the issue, then it means you can just drop it back into place again. What Pro Tools does is when it launches and there's no preference file there, it will just rebuild a new one. I would say, yes, you might spend a long time sort of getting the preferences just as where you need them to be. So taking a safety copy before you trash them is really a useful thing to do. So say that none of that's worked. So what do you do next? So in order to be, to get a support on the support portal, you need to be on a current upgraded support plan or subscription. You can buy an ASC from our web store, but that's probably not something you're going to do as just a regular Pro Tools customer. It is good to know, though, that if you have bought Pro Tools hardware, you do get a complimentary ASC. So it's an Avid support code, which you can then use to get telephone support on that product. So let's talk more about general support. So what you do is you go to your Avid master account. So that's my.avid.com. On the right-hand side and on that main page, you'll see My Support Center. And at the bottom of the list there, it says Access the Support Center or portal. So then you click on there and it will take you to a place where you can log your case. So I've got a screenshot of that here, and you can see you can type in, give it a title, describe very briefly what the problem that you're having. You can see I've gone through the process of choosing the options to get me to Pro Tools support. So slightly maybe confusing terminology. It's terminology we've used internally. So when it says Artist Suite DAW, that's what you're looking for. Nothing to do with the Artist series with controllers. Once you're into Artist Suite, you choose Pro Tools. In this case, I've chosen Pro Tools Software, and then version number 2020.5. So just navigate down through that tree to help you find the right place to get your support. And then once you're there, they'll give you an option to kind of choose the severity of your issue, give more information, and so on. I would say, you can choose to say that, you're a broadcaster and that this is going to take you off air and so on. You might want to do that thinking that you're going to get sort of preferential support, but it's just going to end up back in the same place and maybe take slightly longer. So if you can just sort of make sure you fill all that in correctly. Couple of things about getting support. So you will need your system ID. So in order to do that, if you go to your, again, your Avid Master account and click on My Products and Subscriptions, navigate down to your product, and as you see here, it will show you the system ID that's associated with that product. So you will need that when you create a support case. There's a few other things you can do when you create a support case to fast track things. First of all, attaching your system profile. So that's on whether you're on Mac or on Windows. That's generating a file which gives you information about the system, you know, what OS you're on, maybe what type of hardware you're using, graphics card, memory, all those kind of things, everything that's installed in your computer. So definitely get hold of that and attach that to your support case, and I'll show you in a moment where you can get the information. And also Pro Tools logs. So as Pro Tools, goes about its business, it records logs to a file which you can then, if you can grab that, again, you can attach that to your support case, and will help speed the process along. Some of you might know that we did add something called zip recent logs, which is on Mac as in your utilities folder, for example. That can be useful, but if you would actually attach the full log folder, just zip that up, that would actually be the better option if possible. Always be specific. So if you're getting like a particular error number, then include that exactly specifically in your support request, so that again, that will just make it easier to get to the problem itself. And the last piece of advice is recording a screen capture, or maybe even getting your phone out and recording the what's going on your phone, and again attach that video. So if you can get all that information into a support case before you've even sort of spoken to a support representative, then you're going to be well ahead, and they can look at all that information and then come back to you with sort of more meaningful questions, rather than their first question being, can you get your system profile and can you get your Pro Tools logs and so on. So hopefully that's useful information to know. If you do log a case on the portal, the turnaround time by email should be around 24 hours. So that's typically what we would expect to see. I have a whole bunch of links here that I'm not expecting you to memorize, so we will get those posted up into the chat, and also we can get those posted to our sort of various social media portals. And also after the webinar, we will follow up with an email. We'll tell you where the recording is, and then we'll include those links in there as well. And actually, just on that note, I've been moderating the chat, and a few questions have come in about recordings of past webinars, because we're starting to sort of to build up a backlog of these. We had a great one where Jeff kind of dived into folder tracks on your control surface. So make sure that you kind of check those out. We'll post links to those previous ones as we send out our follow-up email. So look out for that. And as I say, there's some really interesting and good information there. So let's finish off with some of these links. You may actually not have been able to register yet because you've got an issue with registration or activation. So it means you actually can't get into your support portal at all. So there's a useful link there to kind of try and solve those registration activation issues, which are obviously you need to get those sorted out before you can even use Pro Tools in the first place. There's a couple of links there to articles which take you through troubleshooting Pro Tools specifically on Windows, things that you can do to get Windows sort of settings that you can make to make sure your system is running as smoothly as possible for Pro Tools. And then similarly for I put one here for Catalina, but there are other ones for more generic Mac OS troubleshooting and for other specific Mac OSs. I said about collecting your system profile information. Again, there's knowledge base articles to collect your system profile on the Mac, and system profile on Windows, and then another knowledge base article on where to find your Pro Tools log files. So I hope that's some useful information in there. We actually, if you've got more Q&A coming in, we actually do have one of our support representatives moderating the chat. So if you've got a question which is specifically about the support process, so don't ask a question saying my Pro Tools is broken, what should I do? If you've got questions about the process, about maybe sort of how a case has been stuck or anything like this, then obviously you can drop a message into our Q&A and we'll try and get those answered. So we got a few more minutes left, and I know we had there were lots of good questions coming in, lots of feature requests as well. So we will certainly be passing feature requests back to our product management team. And there may be some which came up specifically for, around Gil's presentation. So so I'll hand it back to Greg, who can sort of manage this last bit of Q&A.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dave. That was awesome. And I think a lot of great, useful information there. Those links have been copied into the chat. So if anyone wants to grab that and maybe copy that and save it, that'll be really helpful. We've also given it over to our moderators on all the other streaming platforms so they can share those links with our viewers on those platforms as well. So we did have a couple of questions. There's actually one, Gil, this one's for you. Can you freeze a folder right down to its tree? And I guess a follow-up then would be, what might commit and freeze, and as well as freeze, look like in a folder track setting?
Okay, so asking if you can freeze a folder down to its tree. You can freeze an entire folder, which would basically take everything in that folder and freeze it as a single entity, or you can go through and obviously select individual bits of the folder and freeze it. The second part of the question is it? Can you ask that again? Something about
that was just me adding on a follow-up. Is there any commit workflow for folder tracks as well?
Well, yeah. So I mean, basically, the commit and freeze workflows are going to be like they always are. Freeze is something that you would want to use if you just want to temporarily kind of put in place some processing on a track to free up resources. Because freeze in Pro Tools, when you freeze a track in Pro Tools, you cannot edit it. It is basically what it is. If you want to free those resources but still want to be able to edit things, then you would want to use commit, and you can commit or freeze folders just like you can any other track. If you do it on the upper level of a folder, it's going to do everything basically inside of that and do it as one big element. Or you can dive in and do other things.
Can I just chime in just very quickly? So I think, and that is an important point, Gil. It freezes. It does freeze that top level. So if you're freezing a folder in order to preserve resources, just bear in mind that it's only freezing that top layer. All the other resources are still, all the other plugins are still live,
right,
sort of under the hood. So you may have to sort of go back and sort of deactivate some tracks manually in order to free up that resource.
Cool.
And then there was I did see this other question about from Brian, for a makeshift drum editor, how do you move notes from one articulation to the other? So, Greg, I've actually got the example set up. So, can you let me share my screen real quick, and I can show you real quick how to do that. All right. So, all right. Sometime today. What in the world? All right, so I was on the wrong screen, excuse me. So here we go. There we go. You can see that now?
Yeah.
Nope. You still see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, there we go. All right, so in this example, want to know how to get something from one articulation to the other. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not as simple as just a lot of drum editors where you just grab the notes and just drag them onto the other track. Because it's not a true drum editor, and we are looking at single articulations of an entire underlying MIDI track, which would have all the notes. You basically have to go through, and it's a couple step process, but it's not hard. So, for instance, I drew in a bunch of notes on this open hi-hat track, and all we have to do is come over here, and we're gonna copy that, or actually cut it, and then select our closed hi-hat track and paste it. Now, what it's done is because it's doing something on the entire track, is that it didn't paste it to the right note. So don't need to know what note it came from, but if you open up your events operation and go to transpose, just tell it to transpose all notes to whatever the note track you want, which in this case is F#1, hit apply, and there they are. So we are still kind of talking about a little bit of a workaround, but it's not a very hard workaround, and pretty easy to be able to do that pretty quickly.
Thanks, Gil. So we've got a couple of other questions. I'm actually going to leave, I'm not going to share my screen quite yet. One quick question here from Sam Lowe. When I have instruments in a folder that's collapsed and I want to use VCA spill, the tracks assigned to that VCA don't spill because they are hidden in the folder. Is there a preference to make this work?
Would need to know, I mean, if you're talking about, obviously VCA spill only works on our surfaces. If you are using the latest version of Yukon or UControl 20.5, there is a bunch of new functionality in there to work with folders. And it was actually something we talked about in our webinar before last, which I went over all the new features of that, which is basically there's a preference basically being able to show hidden tracks in a spill. And so it's basically, if you go to UControl settings under general, there's two new lines of preferences in the center section: show hidden tracks in banking layouts and spill, and show closed folder members in banking layouts and spill. So you basically can have so yes, you can actually have, with the correct preferences checked, you can have that folder closed, but then spill a VCA onto the surface, and it will show those closed folder members. If you have show closed folder members in spill checked in the general section of the UControl preferences.
Sorry. Vicente Cruz is asking if we had any report of problems when logging into Avid Link on Catalina. Since he's updated the OS, he's not been able to log in. So version 2020.4 of Avid Link should be fine on Catalina. What I would recommend doing is uninstalling whatever current version you have, and then you can just search Avid Link on the Avid site and grab the latest installer and reinstall it, do a reboot, and you should be fine. If you're still having an issue, I would definitely report that back to support. But yeah, 2020.4 Avid. Yes.
On that, and on an exact point, I'm neglected to say that if you go to Avid Link in the drop down, there is actually support, access to support from there. So it's another way of just rather than having to go to myavid.com, you can go to your the support tab on Avid Link. Cool.
Thanks, Dave. So obviously, in your case, Vicente, Avid Link's not working. So hopefully that clears that up for you. I think that's it currently. Want to go ahead and again thank Gil, thank you Dave, thank you guys so much for an incredible presentation. Lots of great information. Many of you have been asking if we are going to have this available for replay. We will. Those of you who have registered for the webinar and have been here on Zoom, we're actually going to send out an email when it's available to replay live. For those of you who are elsewhere, just keep check on our channel, specifically YouTube, our Avid YouTube channel, of course our website, and we'll have this for replay in the next couple of days. Again, thank you guys. We're going to continue having these. We've got more coming up over the next couple of months. Right now, we're kind of trying to do them every other Tuesday. That's kind of the cadence we have going on. So we'll be announcing the next one shortly. Again, guys, thank you. Please continue staying safe wherever in the world you are. And we look forward to seeing you again here soon. So for now, we'll say thank you and goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.